Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So Monday means it's another sketchbook day, but instead of starting right away with my sketchbook, let me show you one thing. So I think it's like a few weeks ago, probably like early August, I ended up buying this little thing. So it's kind of like a little beat up box. I'm not even gonna pretend I know how to pronounce the name of this brand, but inside is actually a kind of glass pen set. So here's a close-up of the glass pen that I ended up getting. It's much more like a cheaper version. The ones that I've been eyeing are crazy expensive, so I didn't really want to buy them because if I don't end up liking it, what am I gonna do with such an expensive pen? But this one's much more manageable, and I think it's just super cute with a flower kind of embedded into it. And I'll show you guys the tip of it. Always remember to keep your little plastic sleeve for your pens because they'll keep them nice and pristine, but this is kind of what it looks like. I've always seen a lot of people using these types of pens for videos, for ASMR videos, drawing, doodling, writing, calligraphy, and everything. So I wanted to give it a go. The little half peanut shape little thing is actually like a little pen rest, which is kind of nice to have. The other thing in this box is some ink. So it's some kind of like shimmery green, kind of foresty, maybe it's not foresty green, it's like a yellow greenish color, but it has a little bit of shimmer in it, which I think is nice. And it comes with the pen, which is also very convenient, so you can kind of test it out right away. And then the other thing that it came with was this little sheet of sandpaper, which I've heard kind of mixed things about, like sanding the tip of your pen. So probably starting off when I'm using it, I'm not even going to use the sandpaper until a lot later, until I feel confident that I know what I'm doing. So let's move back to our sketchbook and open up a fresh new spread so we can do a little bit of testing, a little bit of a swatch, and some sketches probably. So I'm gonna go ahead and also just kind of pin down my papers. So I like using binder clips just to make sure that my papers don't buckle too much, as well as keeping my sketchbook kind of flat when it's laying down. So I wanted to show you guys a little bit of the actual color of the ink. So you can kind of see it's like a yellowy green color. I love this color, by the way. I often draw Maseki with this kind of color when it comes to like more of the winter or fall season. So I think this might be a great color to use in the future for just like random doodles and stuff. So kind of like right off the bat, I ended up using a brush to do a quick swatch of the color. After that, I switched over to our glass pen, and basically the little ridges on the tip of the glass pen will help the ink flow to the very tip, which I kind of wanted to see how long the amount of ink lasts, I guess, on the pen towards your paper as much as you use it, because the dip pen that I actually own, I find myself dipping quite frequently. Maybe it's normal, I'm not too sure. I'm not super proficient with it, so I'm not too sure if I'm like, you know, the odd one out or if it's like normal and I just have to get used to it. But the inking with the glass pen was actually kind of nice. I found it actually quite smooth. I know some people find the glass pen to be a little bit scratchy or it catches on the paper fibers. So it also might be the paper type that I'm using, which is a very smooth kind of like art paper. So for the most part, there's not really any catching or snaring from the little paper to my pen. I also did a smudge and a water test. So for the water test, I ended up dipping a brush into water to see whether or not this was actually going to budge. Now, for the most part, I didn't really see too much smearing. There's like ever so slightly a little bit of a smear of color, but I didn't really see anything that would technically bother or affect me at that moment. So you're going to see later that I might find it a little bit annoying, which will make me do a different choice for the other doodles. So I ended up doing, I think, 3 different little sessions with the dip pen. So for the most part, I found the dip pen, or like the glass pen I should refer to it as, very easy to use. Like I said, there was not really like any snaring with the page or anything like that. And I think the lines that it produced actually is pretty nice. I don't think it was too thick. It's kind of on the thinner side if you do like quick strokes as well, so it's kind of nice that you can get some variation. And I do like the color of the ink. So for me, this kind of color, besides like autumn, winter, Maseki vibes, it kind of reminded me of my other OC, Moriko or Riko. So I'm going to draw her, which I've done right here with the Pilot color Eno in the color blue, or like the other brand from Uniball, I think. So I sketched Moriko out, and I did 2 to start off because my plan to do for like our swatches and kind of like our test page is that with the green kind of ink that I'm currently using, I will do entirely for the first little sketch, and then for the second sketch we're going to use a different ink, and then for the last one I will just like kind of do dealer's choice to see which I kind of prefer. So starting off, I ended up doing like a little sparkle next to her first to see whether or not I could get a good sense of the line width variation that you can get from either doing like a standard line versus if you're flicking the pen a little bit more quickly and getting some thinner lines, because the last thing I want to do is like to place the pen right on her face and then for it to bleed everywhere. I definitely recommend, if you can, definitely do a test swatch before you do any kind of like drawing that's like, maybe it's like the final version or anything like that, or anything that's more precious to you, because some inks and just like traditional medium, I guess you could say, is just a little bit more unpredictable sometimes, especially if it's like more of a wet medium. So to stay on the safe side, definitely, why did I say it like that? Definitely do a little bit of testing and swatches to see if you know how it's going to behave, just to give you a better idea if something might go wrong later. So what I've noticed, which I don't think you'll notice right away because I only do pretty much the inking first, and then later on we'll do a little bit of washes. So I mentioned earlier that when I did the little water test or like the smudge test, that I wasn't really bothered by it. I didn't find it like super smudgy, or like a lot of the pigment was coming off, so that I found it very difficult to work with, or like at least I didn't think it would look too weird for me to add water afterwards, or if I wanted to add a wash or something. But what I didn't know is that it became a little bit more faded and a little feathery. So when we are kind of done with the inking process for this little green Moriko, I do end up doing a wash, and I'm going to end up not liking it as much. But I feel like the values was kind of necessary for this type of drawing, so I'll try to see if I can find like an alternative way or a different ink for me to use with this glass pen. But like other than probably just my own error, the ink and the pen worked really well together. I found the pen super easy to clean afterwards. So from my knowledge, all you have to do is really just soak your pen a little bit into water and wipe it off to make sure that you get all the water off of, or not the water, the ink off of the grooves of the glass pen. And be careful of not treating it the same way as you would of like rinsing your brushes or cleaning out your brushes. So make sure your tip of your pen doesn't clank or like touch the bottom of your container of water. A lot of us use like glass jars for your water, so you don't want it to touch the bottom and scrape and snap potentially or chip it. So just be very careful for the most part of just like treating this pen, because it's definitely not super non-fragile compared to like other ones that have like wooden or plastic holders, and then metal nibs obviously. Oh, I also thought it would be cute for the little sample drawings of Moriko for both the green one and the next one that we're going to do, is that she'll be holding the little container. So I tried my best to kind of draw some sort of little container jar that's like reminiscent of the one that it came in, because I thought it'd be cute to show the actual ink color alongside with, you know, testing of the lines and all that jazz. Oh, maybe it's because the nib of a glass pen's like on the thicker side for the most part, or at least the one that I currently have. I found it a lot easier for me to go back and forth on the paper to do like darker fills or just like larger fills. So when I've used a dip pen that has like the metal tip, or like let's say like a G pen nib or anything like that, I think if you hold it at the wrong angle, back and forth kind of gets like very scratchy. So like maybe if you push forward, it's not scratchy, but as soon as you pull back, it kind of gives like more of a scratchy feeling, which might rip up your page. It might also damage your nib. So it just doesn't really feel good. Oh, this is when I'm adding in our little washes. Now, don't be alarmed. It's not the, what is it called? The pigment bleeding from where I did my initial lines, which is causing the ink to kind of give my little patchy color. I am dipping a little bit of the ink into the lid of my ink jar and then adding a little bit of water so that we can get a very faded wash and kind of layer up a little bit. But you can kind of see like the areas that got saturated by a lot more water, it became a lot more feathery and kind of like spread out a little bit more and it kind of faded. So I definitely will probably do a different method with this pen if I want to add some extra values. So next up, we are doing the next sketch in kind of more of a cooler blue color. So this is the ink that I've used in a lot of my fountain pens. So I have 2 or 3. I think it's like the Pilot Cockernot fountain pens. I have one in fine and I have one in medium, I think. And I still need to refill them. I believe I cleaned them recently and I need to refill them with ink so that I can use them in my sketchbook once again. But the ink that I'm using, which you would have saw earlier, which was the Pilot, I think it's Shiro Izuku, and this one is in Tsukio. So Tsukio is more of a, I guess like compared to some other blues, it has more of a greenish blue tinge to it, which I don't think shows super well in the video. It looks more just like a cerulean blue or like a standard typical sky blue almost. But this ink, in comparison to the green one, acted a little bit differently. I didn't find myself needing to dip as often compared to like the previous black inks that I used to use with a dip pen. So I think both of them performed pretty similarly, but this one is much more liquidy. I feel like the green one was a little bit more on the thicker side, so it didn't dispense as much ink. You can see that when I'm doing the darker fills for under her chin and some of the back portions of her hair, it's pooling up a lot more. So I feel like the ink just flows a lot quicker because the ink is a lot thinner and it just flows down the glass pen nib a little bit easier. So because of that, I definitely think that it made it easier for me to do a lot of the darker fills, larger fills and stuff, which was kind of nice. But the ink, in my opinion, feathered a little bit too much in certain areas, which I don't think is my favorite. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem if I'm doing just like general doodling and inking. I'm not super proficient or very nitpicky when it comes to that, but it definitely is more feathered compared to the kind of like the green ink that it came with the glass pen. Now, maybe some of you guys might be like, oh, are you going to be doing any kind of like water tests or anything like that with this ink as well? And the answer is going to be no. I am already very familiar with this ink. I know it's kind of like semi-permanent, so there is going to be some give in terms of like if it gets exposed to water, probably like half of it will be kind of smudged around and then you'll still see ghosting of the lines anyway. So it's kind of there and kind of isn't. So I do like this pen when it comes to potentially taking it on the go and taking a water brush and just like messing around and fading some of the lines so that you can get a softer look. Or if you want to use the water brush alongside with diluted ink to build up layers, that's also another way to use it. But kind of like last but not least, I wanted to do one slightly larger sketch, and I am going to be doing this one with the green as well. So it is going to be of Moriko. I was thinking of doing a combination, potentially if like with the 2 inks and doing like green as the base. We'll do like a wash or something and then using the blue as a darker outline and contour over everything. But I think at this point I was kind of tired of just dipping the pen and having to, I don't know, sometimes when I do inking I do get more tired of the drawing quicker. Maybe it's because the details and stuff, or I just don't have the patience for it. So I kind of ran into that problem when I was working on this one as well. But I love this color a lot. If you guys ever use like fountain pens, dip pens, or any kind of like more liquid ink that comes like in a jar or a bottle, do let me know if you have like a favorite brand or color. I always eye a lot of the inks from Jet Pens because some of them come in sets. Like the one that Tsukio came in, that's like part of a 3 set. So there's Tsukio, I forgot the other name is. It's more of like a dark, deeper blue. No, it's a lighter blue. Yeah, it's kind of more of a clearer, lighter blue. And then the other one is a straight up black. So it comes in a set of 3. And I know they have a few other sets, which I would have liked to try because there's one that has like a very similar-ish blue to Tsukio and the other one. but it comes with like a very bright reddish orange color, which I think could be very cool to use in a fountain pen. I've been trying my best to not buy too many inking products because I know I'm not the most proficient in it and I don't gravitate towards doing a lot of line art or inking, even though I do want to try. But I did end up buying a few more refills or like cartridges for my, I think it's like the Pentel Energel Klena. I ended up getting another pen as well because I noticed, even though I love this pen quite a bit, where I talked about like finding my favorite pen, the barrel's a little bit on the thinner side, so I ended up getting a thicker one, which I'll talk about in a different video because like I said, I found some cool pretty colors that we could doodle with, which I think could be nice to do for a future video, just because I tend to ink a lot of things like with black, so it'd be a nice change of pace to ink with some different other colors and like maybe do water-based markers as the base, or we could do watercolors or something. I've just been having a lot more fun doing traditional videos or like traditional art videos because I've been having more fun in my sketchbook in general, which is great. And I think it does help with the change of paper, the change in size of my sketchbook. I've talked about this a lot in like the first page of my sketchbook for this particular one. So if you're ever curious about my thoughts and feelings about my previous sketchbook or notebook compared to this one, I think I definitely talk about it in that video if you're interested. And for the most part, I think I've done quite a few different spreads from the very start of my sketchbook, and I've only done one fan art so far. The rest has been mostly just like all of my OCs because that's what I've been having fun doodling the most and playing around with color combinations and stuff. And I did get a suggestion to doing a full process video about doing a sketchbook spread. So if you're interested in something like that, do let me know what medium you prefer. I'm assuming people will most likely want to watch more of like the water-based marker video version, just because maybe the picking of colors or combinations or doing your blocking out of your colors before doing line art might be a little bit more intimidating. So I'll definitely consider that for a future sketchbook session video. So probably not next week. I think next week I will be talking a little bit more about alcohol marker bleed through and ways you can cover it up. I just did one spread with alcohol markers, so we can do some covering up of some of those bleed through from the back of your sketchbook pages, because I think it's always fun being able to use up as much real estate in your sketchbook. I don't think I do it the best, but I definitely still find it fun to do because I don't know. If you have the paper, you might as well fill it up, right? So I don't really like want to waste it, but I also don't want to pressure people into like you have to fill up your sketchbooks to the max. I think you should fill it up the way that you want to and just like whatever you're comfortable with. And for like the longest time, especially because I did mostly graphite drawing and more like realism, I only sketched on the right side of the sketchbook spread and never on the left to prevent smudging. But at this point, I don't really care too much, and I just keep a sheet of paper in between to keep from the pages from rubbing on another so that they don't smudge one another. Instead, they can just smudge on a separate piece of paper, and then we can deal with the aftermath some other time. But because I rambled my way through everything, here's kind of like our finished test spread with our kind of glass dip pen, which I think was very fun to use. And I like using it because it's just less mess. I was gonna say less mess free, but it's less messy is what I meant to say. Because the idea of like keeping everything clean and washing it or wiping it down is just much easier. So it made it easier for me to switch between inks and have a little bit more fun that way. So we have free little doodles of Mariko, who I've been loving drawing recently. So yeah, she's my kind of pretty biker girl, if anything. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's session, and maybe in the future I will try out some other colored inks, or we can do something fun for Inktober next month, which I don't think I'll make prompts, but it'll be still fun to do something. Maybe I'll follow some other prompts that some people might do, because I don't know if I can commit to doing another list and committing to doing all 31 days. But I think that's it for today's little session, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me work with a glass pen in the sketchbook, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!